Hi everyone, and welcome to Wordsmiths. My name is Jenna, and here we talk about elements of storytelling to help you with your own creative projects. Today's topic is conflict, because conflict is at the heart of every story. We're going to talk about 7 specific types of central conflicts. So, without conflict, there's no story. It is essential. It keeps us engaged. We tend to live in a state of uncertainty, and thus we search for closure. So, the more engaging your conflicts are, the more likely a reader will stay. Conflict involves risk, goals, emotions, and expressing ourselves, and that can be scary because it means there are things at stake. A character who has things to lose is interesting. It's someone we can connect with. It makes them relatable. Humans are, by nature, social creatures, though some of us are better at it than others. Seeing someone struggle with challenges and emotions similar to our own will make us sympathize with them. We become invested in the story when it gets an emotional response out of us. Conflict is also an opportunity for growth. Remember, most protagonists end up being dynamic. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger, so they say. You learn from your mistakes. Stories also mirror real life. Life is messy, conflict is messy, stories should be messy, but an organized mess so people can make sense of it. So don't be nice to your characters. Give us angst. It's no fun if a character goes on a journey that's all smooth sailing. So, how to create some stormy seas. First conflict type, person versus person. This is very common and clear, old as time because it works. Don't underestimate the power of having an antagonist. This conflict is central to any hero versus villain kind of story. It means there will be opposing goals, views, or ideologies. It could be personal or more situational. Wanting revenge is a personal conflict, like in Poe's Cask of Amontillado short story. In DreamWorks' Prince of Egypt, it's more situational because the characters have goals that place them in opposition. There may be power imbalances involved, like the leader of an organization versus a civilian with a personal vendetta. Each party might also have a different level of investment, like how Ramses takes Moses' quest personally. It will heighten the excitement when you take advantage of all the little nuances that can exist between two characters and their situations. It might not be clear who's right or wrong, especially with moral conflicts. Everyone's got their own opinion. That's half the fun. Person versus society is very common for dystopias and science fiction. The protagonist faces social constructs, an institution, laws, norms, taboos, mores. Mores are strict norms a society has deemed morally correct or incorrect. This type of conflict targets our desire to be accepted and connect with others, or retain individuality. Depending on the issue, the main character can handle the conflict privately or openly. The question to ask yourself is, at what level is the society involved? Is your character doing something the society isn't likely to accept, like being a murderer, or desiring a romance that would be frowned upon? Or is your character fighting something that more people would support? If there's social injustice going on, does the rest of the society know? How much do they know? You could call person versus government a subset. There are different levels to play with when working on this kind of conflict. It'll affect the consequences and risks that your main character is willing to take. What do they stand to gain? Will they have support? What to them is worth the risk? Because there can be a lot of risks. Next, person versus technology. This is also common in science fiction. This is where the protagonist has to work against machines, scientific progress, robots, technology failure. As a central conflict, it's characterized by fighting out-of-control tech or surviving it. There's all kinds of cases of a machine gaining a mind of its own or scientists playing God, like with Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. But trying to decode a system or develop something needed to solve a problem counts. So would trying to survive a failing mode of transportation. Basically, it comes down to, is science good or bad? Sparked by the Industrial Revolution, of course, and that debate is still flaming. There are so many trade-offs to technology, like pollution and global warming, eye damage from screen time, and there's even evidence that looking down at your phone and having poor posture could be making a bone spur at the back of your skull to compensate for the forward weight. Anyway, a major theme with this conflict, besides is science good or bad, would be what makes us human? What separates us from the machines that we create? Person versus nature makes a great survival story. The main character has to fight their environment. Clearly, this conflict targets the fear of death and the desire to live. Nature challenges us emotionally because, well, it doesn't care. The world doesn't care if you die or you're sick or you need water and food. Every living being can and will eventually die. Fighting to survive is instinctual, and desperate times will call for desperate measures. Your character might experience distress from having to kill animals for food or self-preservation. They may feel guilty for abandoning others in life or death situations. Survivor's guilt is real, even if a situation was out of their control. People are emotional beings, and nature doesn't really have a use for emotion, so it can be a very engaging conflict to have two forces that are so at odds with each other. Person versus supernatural is the conflict type with all kinds of weird and inexplicable things like ghosts, magic, aliens, etc. This can be any kind of contemporary or urban fantasy story like Blue Exorcist or Percy Jackson. It can be paranormal or horror genres too. Supernatural can cover a lot of ground. It could be external or internal. External would be like facing off against supernatural beings. Something like struggling with magic or visions could be more internal. Having a conflict with religion and God also falls under this conflict type. Maybe your character has a faith or finds a faith, but while everything's going wrong for them, they start to doubt or renounce their beliefs, and everything kind of boils into that, "Why are you doing this to me?" moment. In summary, this conflict preys on our fear of the unknown and simultaneous interest in it. As a subset of person versus supernatural, we have versus destiny or luck. It can involve prophecies, fortune tellers, oracles, the chosen one. Basically, the character's quest causes them inner turmoil. So this leans toward an internal conflict. They might reject the quest, try to change the path, believe they aren't the right person for it, or be constantly on the verge of giving up. Frodo. The core of this conflict is how it explores the existence of free will. Are we destined for a certain life, or can we change it? Is changing it the path we were meant to take? Is there some other force beyond us making our choices, or driving us to take those choices? Is free will an illusion? Most of us have this fear that we aren't in control. Simulation theory is the idea that our world is, well, a simulation. That our universe and the people in it are all living some highly advanced program with some kind of overseer, in which case our entire reality is a lie and our individual existences are just experimental, inconsequential strings of code waiting to be erased. Yeah, there's an existential crisis for you. Person versus destiny conflicts sort of pit the protagonist against the writer. It makes it very interesting when the character fights their perceived destiny, and then they either have to accept it or meet a new ending. Person versus self is our final conflict, and it's internal. The point is the protagonist's worst enemy is their own self. The conflict is all in their mind or their heart. They're battling inner demons. Poe's Telltale Heart short story is a conflict that's all in the narrator's own head. He's going crazy over this innocent old man, and the struggle with himself leads him to break down and admit to the police that he killed the old man. I do want to make this distinction. Are you making a conflict that's plot-centric or secondary? Because if you're trying to write a conflict that's more secondary as the main problem, it might not hold up very well. To be plot-centric, dealing with it has to make up the main action and drive your character's choices. In the book Speak, Melinda's struggle is about being a high school rape victim. The state of her mental health dictates how she handles that school year and whether or not she will speak up for herself. To be a secondary conflict, it's more likely going to be a character flaw they struggle with, or something from their past that affects how they approach certain situations. That can be better defined as an internal struggle rather than conflict, which is great for creating more story and character depth. You can have more than one conflict type going on too as your central conflict. A lot of stories do. Alright, time for prompts. For this first one, you can try making a list of reasons for a person versus person conflict. Choose your favorite and write a short story. Remember, it can be personal or more situational. Just make sure that your protagonist and antagonist have clear goals that pit them against each other. Also, if you're into science fiction, you can try developing a piece of technology or a technical system that has pros and cons for the world. How does it operate? What was its original purpose and how might it be abused? Who has access to it or control over it? Those questions will help you navigate the conflict. Also, as the author, you control your character's fate. How might your character's choices lead them on different paths that eventually end the same way? Write a story where somehow your character knows the end, or thinks they know the end, and spends the story fighting to change it. That's all for today. I hope you enjoyed, and until next time, keep reading and stay inspired.